Hey, welcome back to another episode of Captain's Log. And today, what I would like to talk about is Star Trek Discovery. Yeah, I know it's going to be a controversial subject for a lot of Star Trek fans and things like that. And I've mentioned how I feel about it before, but I'd like to expand a little bit more on that today. Star Trek Discovery has been given a bad reputation by a lot of people because they claim that it's not in keeping with the vision that Gene Roddenberry first had when he first created Star Trek, the original series. But you know what, as I recall, that's exactly what was said about Star Trek Next Generation when it came out. And also for every other Star Trek show that has come out since then, including the animated series. And now, one of the complaints that I originally had about Next Gen was the fact that it seemed like the starship was being run by committee. And a thought occurred to me, who ever heard of a starship being run that way, where the captain asked everybody's opinion before he made a decision? Also, one of the things I didn't like about Next Gen, was the fact that the captain never seemed to be on the bridge. He always seemed to be leaving Riker in charge of it. And I'm going, wow, that's a little different. Although then I got to remember from my Navy days, I can't recall a time when the captain of the ship was on the bridge of the ship the whole time. He couldn't have been. Even during the shift of tour duty on board the ship. And anyway, so back to what I was saying. And I felt the same way that about Discovery. In other words, I didn't like it because a couple of things. The Klingons, for one thing, I thought they were too bald. I mean, just too outlandish. Yeah, they spoke the Klingon language, but they didn't have any hair. And I remember all the Klingons, even the human version of Klingons, having hair and beards and things like that. Also, a big problem I had with Discovery was the fact that the tech in Discovery seemed to be too futuristic for it having to be 10 years before the time of the original series. And that just seemed a little off. Even if it was an experimental ship, it shouldn't have been that far ahead. Some of those things in Discovery, on the Discovery, should have been available on Pike's Enterprise. Even that Enterprise seemed to be a little bit too futuristic, but I could deal with it because it was the Enterprise. And I was actually kind of excited to see the crossover between Discovery and the original series. But now back to what I was saying. I also, one of the other things, and I had felt this way about Discovery, was that it was too woke. It was too politically correct for Star Trek. But then I remembered, of course, the original series had the same kind of situation where they were talking about racism. They did that in the episode "Let That Be Your Last Battlefield." Bullying, that was covered in Plato's Stepchildren. The thought of a privileged society, the upper class siphoning off from the lower class. That would be the Cloud Miners, the original series Cloud Miners. Oh yes, and of course slavery, which was covered in the episode, the original episode of Breads and Circuses. And there was lots of others. They managed to sneak so many things by the censors. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it briefly here, that I've come to realize that Star Trek isn't so much about what you see on the screen. Now, I've heard some people say that it's only canon from the original series and from, the other ones like Next Gen, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and even Enterprise. But I personally, I can't believe that that's what Gene Roddenberry wanted, was it to look like that all the time. Heck, he was the one who brought Star Trek back and in Next Gen, and he was the one who approved all the changes from the original series to Next Gen. He even had a hand in some of the other ones. And anyway, so my point being is that Star Trek isn't so much about what you see on the screen and whether it fits within your own personal vision of Star Trek or not. It's more about the stories and whether they're in keeping with Gene Roddenberry's philosophy. And it's just that to me. Now, Discovery has all that, the philosophy of Gene Roddenberry and more. Yeah, there's some parts of it I don't like or particularly care for, like Michael Burnham seemingly to cry at the drop of a hat. I've noticed that she tends to turn on the waterworks a little bit too much for my taste. I also mentioned the look of the Klingons, but they seem to fix that in, I think it was in the second season, the Klingons got hair again. I know it was at least by the third season they had jumped forward in time, and I haven't seen any Klingons yet after the second season. Another thing that I had a problem with in Discovery was that at the time of the original series, each ship had its own special uniform badge that it would wear, like our modern military or our current military has unit patches to identify which unit you particularly belong to. Like, the Enterprise had the Delta symbol that showed the Enterprise. The Constellation had its own, the Defiant, and I'm sure the Intrepid probably had some form of the IDIC symbol. But in Discovery, they all had the Delta badge, very almost exactly like what the Enterprise had in the original series. Now, somebody brought something up one time when I was talking about Star Trek and all that the explanation for that could have been the fact that when Next Gen crew went back in time and chasing the Borg in the movie First Contact, and even though they actually set everything right because the Borg prevented the first contact by the Vulcans with the Earth because they had conquered the Earth, and I don't know what but they managed to keep Earth hidden or away from the Vulcans' attention, so first contact was never made. Now, the Enterprise people went back in time and they managed to set everything right, but in doing so, they revealed who they really were to Zefram Cochrane, and his friend Lily even went on board the Enterprise E, and she had to have seen the Delta badges that the Enterprise crew was wearing. And so that the idea probably came about that that's what the badges had to be. And that's how the Delta badges in in Discovery, evolved into. And so I was going, whatever, minor thing. And I don't like to get stuck on the minor details. And so to me, Star Trek is, like I've said before, is all about the story and the ideas and stuff. And now this brings up to the fact that I believe that every form of Star Trek has something to contribute to the multiverse of Star Trek, to the universe, the world of Star Trek, however you want to put it. Each one has something that they can bring to the table and contribute to the greater good. Even, of course, Star Trek fan films. There's many, many, many Star Trek fan films out there. In fact, some of my favorite Star Trek stories are the fan films. And of course, the most famous ones would have been the web series Star Trek New Voyages, Phase 2, and of course, Star Trek Continues, both of which I enjoyed immensely. I even enjoyed Starship Farragut. That was a good one. One of my favorite films was, of course, Star Trek First Frontier, which was a story about Robert April when he took command of the Enterprise, a brand new ship in his time. And I was quite interested in that one, even though it wasn't technically canon, but it still fit because it helped fill in some of the gaps of Star Trek history for me. Another favorite one of mine was Star Trek of Gods and Men, and that filled in some of the gaps of what happened to the original crew after Kirk died, and in Star Trek Generations. So again, Star Trek Discovery has as much a right to be in Star Trek as any other series, like Picard. And let's see. Oh, of course, Lower Decks. That's a fun one. I just see it as a fun, taking a break from the seriousness. Having some fun. I am especially looking forward to Strange New Worlds, starring Pike and Spock, and of course, Number One. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I've heard rumors that they're going to go back to an episodic way of storytelling instead of the story arc like we've seen in Picard and, of course, Discovery. But either way, I'm looking forward to seeing it and seeing what they do with the characters pre the original series. In fact, I have all 3 seasons of Discovery on video disc. I have Picard. I have short treks. I have the animated series. I have Enterprise. I have lots of Star Trek series on video disc. And to me, they're as much a part of Star Trek as the original series, as Next Gen, as the animated series. I know I'm repeating myself, but I just can't say it enough. So I honestly may have some problems, disagreements with Discovery, but hey, no, it's not going to agree with everybody. And so personally, I think the people who seem to make a big deal out of it are the people who are sticks in the mud, who aren't going with the Vulcan philosophy of IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. There's room for everybody. And so with that, I think that's all I'm going to say today about Star Trek Discovery. Next up is part 6 of my mini series of the people who have multiple roles in Star Trek. And then I'm going to end today's show with one of my favorite Star Trek fan films, Steam Trek. This is actually a pretty funny about 10, 11 minutes of somebody superimposing the idea of Star Trek onto technology that's no greater than steam technology. It's actually quite fun. All right. And so with that, we'll continue on to the next one, which is the multiple roles.
Program complete. Enter when ready. Program complete. Enter when ready.
All right, that's it for this week's show. And before I sign off, I'd like to say I'm going to take a break from the show because for a couple of weeks, because I have surgery coming up pretty soon on my knee, and I don't think I'm going to be in too much of a mood to put anything together. And so it'll probably be a couple of weeks before I have another show ready to upload for you. But as always, may the great bird of the galaxy bless your planet.